start.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tawana Collins Boo.
Sorry. Arnell Brady, speech language pathologist.
Welcome to episode 7 of Blue Table Talk. And on episode 7 of Blue Table Talk, we want to talk about too much autism. And do we think there is an overdiagnosis of autism? So, what do you think, Mr. Brady?
That's a good question. And as you know, I've been working as a speech language pathologist now for 35 years. I really can say 37 when I served 2 years as a speech language pathology assistant. But when I first started, and that was, back in 1982, we saw autism 1 in about 15,000. As a matter of fact, let me read you something from 1973, a definition of autism.
Okay, that was the year I was born.
Oh.
So this is 45 years old.
Okay. Oh, okay. Autism, a psychological aspect of schizophrenia. In childhood, the chief symptoms of autism are withdrawal behavior, reduction or absence of socialization, bizarre play activity, echolalia, lack of verbal communication, purposeful activity, and perseveration. That was in 1973, the definition of autism. They were basically calling it psychiatric or psychosis.
Yeah, because it says schizophrenia
related
in
to
there, right?
schizophrenia. Yes.
Okay.
That was in 1973. But since then, we have seen a movement forward and a better definition of autism. And here, let's read what they said in, that was 1973. Let's go to 1993.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I had a son in 93.
Oh, we hitting right.
Right. Now we're talking 25 years later.
Okay. Mental introversion, in which the attention or interest is fastened upon the patient's own ego, a self-centered mental state from which reality tends to be excluded, a syndrome appearing in childhood with symptoms of self-absorption, inaccessibility, aloneness, inability to relate, highly repetitive play, and rage reactions if interrupted. Predilection for rhythmical movements and many language disturbances. The etiology, they say, was unknown. They still considering it to be a mental condition, still within that psychiatric psychosis definition. Whew, I'm so glad we've learned a lot since then. Let's look at the current edition of the Diagnosis and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, what we call 5. And let's see what it says. Autism spectrum disorder is characterized by persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts, including deficits in social reciprocity, nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction, and skills in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. So even though it's come quite a ways, there's still a lot to be learned. Now, they say within the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, individual clinical characteristics are noted through the use of specifiers. And then they're talking about accompanied with or without accompanying intellectual impairment. And this is something that we really want to be careful of, because just a person has autism does not mean that they also have a cognitive or mental or intellectual deficit.
Okay.
That's what we really have to be careful of. And because some people just assume because if the person is not acting right, they don't know much.
Yes.
Not true.
Okay.
Wrong answer. Okay? So, again, with or without accompanying structural language impairment. So, again, they're saying, and this is the argument that I often find myself making in the schools. In the schools, they have had a policy, a procedure, a rule for the past, I know, at least 10, 15 years, that if a child has autism, they will not give that child speech and language pathology services in the schools. They say it is included in the language component of the autistic classroom. That's not the case, because many times the teacher, the special education teacher in the classroom, is really not knowledgeable or prepared to really do language intervention or speech intervention. So oftentimes, just because the child is behaving in a non-typical way does not mean that that child could not benefit from formal and professional speech language pathology services.
Right.
And so my argument has been that if the child has autism, does the child have a language impairment as well? If the child has a language impairment as well, then that child should have 2 handicapping descriptors on their IEP. It should be autism and speech language impaired, not just autism. And this is what we're seeing in many cases. And so these children, these students are being denied speech language services that would probably greatly benefit them. And also, sometimes it comes with or without a mental disorder. So we have to be very careful and not just lump all of these children on the spectrum in one basket, in a sense.
Yeah, because it seems like that's what they're doing. Just everybody got autism. Everybody just diagnosed. That's why the numbers are going up, being so high. Every time they put out the new numbers, it's going up and up and up. And so it's like they're not separating. It's just everybody has autism now.
Yes, and they're lumping them all together. They put them all in the classroom. We see a whole classroom full of autistic children. Now, what are they supposed to learn from each other?
Right.
And this, and we know that when you put a child, say, in the spectrum who has good mental capacity, might even have good developing language abilities, could benefit from being in a normal general ed classroom so they can learn from their peers. But what are they going to learn in a classroom with children on the spectrum at all different levels,
right,
and having all different conditions? They're not going to learn much. Now, we have a child that just yesterday at one of the charter schools received an award for the most outstanding student in the whole school.
Oh, wow, that was great.
This was a child who, at a very young age, was placed in a Chicago public school in the developmental classroom.
Okay.
Even at that age, this child was showing skills, but because he had that diagnosis of autism, they just assumed that he could not learn and placed him in the developmental delayed classroom with children who had global delays across many different areas.
Okay.
The mother had to fight to get that child out, and I was with her every step of the way in getting that child out of that classroom. And we got the child out of the classroom by arguing, does the child have autism? Yes, the doctors have said he has autism. But now, does he have a speech and language impairment?
Okay.
Yes, he had a speech and language impairment. He was learning language at a slower rate, but he was learning language. And so the schools wanted to say, well, he's getting all that he needs in that classroom. We said, not true.
Right.
So we were able to get him out of that classroom, and we have followed that child ever since, who is now in the 5th grade. And we followed him ever since, and making sure that he is placed in a regular classroom and not in a self-contained classroom. And just yesterday at his school's assembly, he was given the award as the most outstanding student in the school. And I joked with the mom, what if he had been left in that developmentally delayed classroom?
Well, you know about our fight.
Yes,
We had to fight
Very
to
similar.
get George out of the self-contained class. And every year I'm telling them, no, you know, he needs to be in another
More
classroom.
challenge.
Yeah, and they was waving me off. And so finally, you know, they started halfway, you know, taking them out for certain subjects. And then I'm like, no. And then you came and you told them, no, we want them all the way out. We don't want halfway, you know. So because we was doing so much work outside the school, you know, when we was taking them to school, being in that self-contained classroom with everybody, was just holding him in that just classroom.
Yeah, they were limiting his ability to grow.
Yeah. So and when he went to the regular classroom, and that's when he, you know, started blossoming because we was doing so much work with all the other therapies outside, plus the school. So,
you know, I recall a situation in one of the suburban schools where we fought for the child to be reconsidered, to be reevaluated, because we were just seeing so much more growth and development, so much better functioning in the clinical setting. And so we questioned what was going on in the school setting. And so when we took to the school some of the reports and of his progress in the clinical setting, we asked if he could even be dismissed from special ed.
okay.
The special ed coordinator told me she had been the special ed coordinator for 12 years, and she had never dismissed the child from special education, so she really didn't know how to do it.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, that don't mean it couldn't happen. You just never done it.
Never done it. Yeah. Now, there was another case I recall at a school here over on the southwest side when the child was on the spectrum and was really doing well in the private clinical setting, but in the school setting was not doing as well. We took a video of the child in the clinical setting to the school.
Okay.
And at that time, I had one of the little portable VCR players where I could just pop the cassette into the player and it would play the video. And we said to the teachers, look at this, you know, and because they had said that when they presented a keyboard and a computer to him, he would toss the keyboard, he just would not cooperate. And so the video of him was him working the computer and happily doing so and making tremendous gains on it. And I recall one of the teachers said, "Ooh, student, you have been fooling us." And I thought to myself, no, he hasn't been fooling you all. You all have been fooling him, telling him that you're the teacher. The parents.
I heard that before. As far as George, when they was like, you know, when, like, oh, we didn't know George could talk in the beginning because they were saying, oh, he doesn't talk, you know, at school. Okay, well, like you said, was you asking them questions at school?
Yeah.
What was you doing?
What kind of environment were you creating to help him talk?
They were so shocked when they saw that George, you know, knew how to talk, you know, in his younger years, when about third grade. So I know what you're talking about as far as that situation.
Well, now, you asked that question, you know, do I think that autism is being diagnosed? No, that's a hard question to answer. But I'll tell you this, in my 35 years, I have seen a number of children diagnosed with autism that really did not have autism. They did have some multisensory issues, in processing and things of that nature, but they were not autistic. We even had a case in the Chicago Public Schools. A little girl in the 3rd grade had been in the autistic classroom from kindergarten all the way to 3rd grade. And we asked that she be reevaluated, and she was reevaluated at the University of Illinois.
Okay.
The University of Illinois said she did not have autism.
Oh, wow.
And we went due process with that case, and the child was placed in a private therapeutic day school for children with learning disabilities, not autism, but with learning disabilities at the local school expense. And we thought that was the case. And that, to me, that was a typical case of many kids who are misdiagnosed. And you can see that the evolution even of the understanding of autism, 1973, well, that was only what, how many years ago?
That was 45 years ago. I was born in 73. 73,
okay.
And the other one was 1993, the second definition you were.
And the thing that's really characteristic of all those definitions is that they're all simply describing behaviors. They're not describing the very mechanism that causes autism, and this is why autism was brought out of the psychosis category. This is why it was brought out of the schizophrenic category, is because it is not a psychosis.
Right.
It's a neurodevelopmental disorder that can be handled, can be managed. And you asked the question earlier before we went on live. You said, what is this about harnessing neuroplasticity?
Yeah.
And that is something that we have now been able to do. And neuroplasticity is a biological fact that the human brain can change its structure and how it functions based upon experience.
Okay.
And thought. That is, you can change, it can physically change. That's for autism and anything else. It can physically change if you create an environment in which it can grow.
Okay.
And that's basically that. And so we take that neuroplasticity, that is that those cells in the brain can become active. Those cells in the brain can grow and develop and become active in the processing of perceptual information. All you have to do is to structure the proper exercises. And we've seen it happening with things like Alzheimer's, with stroke victims, with autism, with learning disabilities, with behavior disorders, attention disorders. It has been successful in treating a number of people. And so we have to be very careful in how this diagnosis of autism is being tossed around. Mm-hmm. Yes, I do think there is an overdiagnosis of autism, but how can we change that? The only way we can change that is through education and a better understanding of exactly what it is. And once we get a good handle on exactly what is causing these symptoms, not just the symptoms themselves, not just making a list of these behaviors, but what is the actual mechanism, the physical mechanism in the brain that results in this manner.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I saw some stuff out of Howard University that is earth-shattering in talking about the bridge between a normal brain and what is autism, and how you can take that autism and turn it back into a normal brain. This kind of stuff is out there. It takes years to get it approved and years for it to be studied and restudied and restudied. But in the process, we need to be taking advantage of some of this research, especially the stuff that won't hurt people.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the main key right there, what you just said, and what you have been saying on all of the Blue Table Talks. You know, the retraining of the brain. That's very important. The fast forward, the mind builder programs, the aerobics programs, and there's a lot of more other programs. That's why speech therapy is so important.
Interactive metronome. Yes.
Because all of those programs really help and to advance.
And music.
Like you said, the drums.
Drums.
We talked about the last week when one of your students was, doing the drums. The parent thought that the student wasn't going to talk or be, and the student just went off, and they were so shocked.
There was a little boy, who's coming to the clinic now, from Africa.
Wow.
Has amazing rhythmical skills. He is on the spectrum. Has amazing rhythmical skills, and that's what we need to take advantage of. He's not talking, but he's drumming.
Okay. Well, that's when he's talking through the drums.
He's talking through the drums. So we're definitely going to use those drums to bridge the talking.
Okay, yeah, because usually when you can't talk, you use the other means. To talk for you, the PEC systems and the drums and
the computers. People are using computers to talk.
Yeah, like we said, everything is advanced now. So
speech generating devices.
Okay.
Speech generating devices. They even have devices now that help to clear up unintelligible speech. It is so much out here. This is why this whole journey, just as these books are examples of people learning, we as parents and providers, we also need to be on that journey of learning about this condition. Because I'm telling you, these people don't have all the answers.
No.
And some of the answers that they have are wrong.
Well, and some of them not living it either.
That's right. That's right.
They study it and they learn about it and they write about it. But, the parents and the educators and everyone who's dealing with it on an everyday basis. So, we're the one who's going through this whole journey. So, but yeah, that was very interesting. So, like I said, if you want any of these services that Brady Speech has to offer to retrain the brain, for your child, the address is 5228 South Blackstone Avenue. The number is 1773-493-4000. And next week, because last week I made a call out for all the different organizations to come on and use this platform, because this is a community platform, to talk about what you have going on or what services do you offer. So I connected with a awesome group called Uniquely Autistic. So the founder will be on next week, so I'm so excited about it. So please tune in next week, because we're starting to get on the road here at Blue Table Talk. So I'm really looking forward to it. And everybody else, any other organizations would like to come on or send me the informations, or any of the parents or any of my viewers out there, you have any more questions or comments, please message me, inbox me, and I'll get back to you. If you want to reach out to me, it's All Families United, and the number is 1-708-320-9018. Again, All Families United, 1-708-320-9018. I thank you so much for tuning in to Blue Table Talk, and please tune in to next week. It's going to be awesome. Thank you so much. Have a blessed night.